Now, as I was saying, if you want to do a fancier button, I suggest that you create that button in Illustrator. So in Illustrator, I'm going to create a new document, and it is important to make sure that it's an RGB document. And I'm going to create myself a nice little button. So it's going to be a rounded rectangle. And by the way, if you want to adjust the roundedness, you can press the up or down arrow while you have it in drawing mode, or while you're still drawing it before you let go. And now the next thing I want to do is add a gradient to this button. Now, one of the things that I suggest is that you use one of the swatch libraries, because there's some really nice gradients in here. Things like the earth tones. Some of these are really good looking. Now I've created a simple gradient. I've got a stroke. Let me make that a little bit thicker just so I can really see it. And I'm also going to adjust this gradient, hopefully. Oh, let me make sure that I'm on the fill. Haha. That's something that can get you pretty often, because if you're on the stroke and your stroke does not, if you accidentally click on stroke here and your stroke does not have a gradient, then you'll try and use the gradient tool and it won't work. So that can be a little frustrating at times. Anyway, now I've got a nice little gradient for the background, and I'm going to create my text, play on. Let's see, we got Myriad Pro. It's not the best font in the world, but it'll work. Let's try the bold version of that font. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to make it white. That is a very, very legible button at this point. So another thing that I like to do is create outlines and then select everything and make sure that it's properly centered. Now, before we go on with this button and before we use it in Edge, it's very important that we go ahead and set our artboard so that it fits this text. We'll find that up here under Artboard, Fit to Selected Art. What this does is trims everything just the way we want. Now what we can do is File Save. I'm going to do File Save As, and I've been playing in here already. It's going to be button 3 background. You can call that whatever you want. If you do have a space in it, be aware that it's going to have to do something. So I'll just do a dash instead. But it's going to be an SVG, and I'm going to leave it just as it is. I'm not going to change the defaults there. Just leave that just as it is. Alright, now back in Edge, it's time to actually load that button in as an asset. In order to do that, I do File, Import, and let me go to this particular folder that I'm working with, and I put it in Assets right there, and there's the file, and there is my button. Now that I have this button, I'm going to do the same sort of thing that I did before. I'm going to convert this to a symbol. This will be button 3, and then I'm going to go inside of there and change some of the animation. Now I need to have a few things here. I need to have a label, which is Control L. That will be over. I'm going to go later to 3/4 of a second, and I'm going to do another label with Control L. This will be out. I'm going to have a stop at the end of each one. So just 1/4 of a second after. And now I'm going to actually apply a little bit different thing here. I'm going to try doing a very quick little blur or something. Or maybe I can do a hue change. Let's try that. There we go. It turns green. That's kind of fun. So I'm going to reverse that by copying the keyframes. So now we have that turns green and then turns green back to red. So that's kind of fun. I just saved that. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to stop this at the very beginning. That button has to be stopped. And then I'm not going to have it appear until there. So then I'll turn it to on. And then I'll turn it to off afterwards. So that's 1/2 second later. And in the middle, I'm going to change the opacity to 100. At the beginning, it will be set to 0. And then I can copy that keyframe for 0 and paste it to the end. So now that comes in and then leaves out. Now I've got some code on ones before, so I'm going to right click on that one, open up the actions. I'm going to copy this code because now I can come to my last button and do the same thing. So on a click, it's going to play. On a mouse over, I can insert that code, and I need to make sure this thing is called button 3, and it is indeed called button 3. So on the mouse over, it needs to do the over section, and it says my button, get the symbol, button 3, and then it says my button, play over. Then we can copy all of that, do a mouse out, and that would change to mouse out. So let's go ahead and see how well this works. Ooh, we did forget one thing. I should have done that. Of course, that is change our cursor to the pointer when we're over that button. So now let's try that. First button is not animated. The second button has the animation, but it's a little glitchy, I notice, because it has an internal object. And the third button comes in, and I've never had any glitchiness with this particular type because it's an SVG. And we're able to finish. So that's how to do some basic interactivity. And of course, there are other things that you can do with this interactivity. You could have it so that when you click on one of these that you open up a website or something like that, and you'll find a lot of these actions are already here for things like open URL. But the big ones that you want to be aware of that you'll be doing a lot are getting the symbol and then using the stop and play and stop at or play from. These all kind of work. The stop and stop at and the play and play from work pretty much the same thing. The only difference is the arguments that you add to them. But I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any comments, please let me know. Thanks.